I was kind of surprised to see the value bet from Doug Polk for a third pot. I'm like, huh, that's thin. But turns out, good value bet for a third pot. Doug Polk knows his GTO solver. Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan. Happy New Year! I'm here with another hand from the Doug Polk, Negreanu High Stakes Battle. They've been battling it back and forth, playing 200, 400, no limit, Texas Hold'em. Let's get right to the hand. Negreanu wakes up with the Ace King, one of the best hands in no limit Hold'em, despite just being a drawing hand. He raises it up. Doug Polk has a real drawing hand, Ace Jack offsuit, and decides to 3-bet it. Back to Negreanu, easy 4-bet. Back around to Polk, easy call. This is all standard pre-flop poker. If for some reason you knew your opponent, Negreanu, old man, was weak and tight and never 4-bet bluff, maybe you could fold the Ace Jack, but you're not trying to fold Ace Jack pre-flop. So far, all this is perfectly standard. When you're playing pretty deep stacked, you just can't let your opponent blindly run you over with aggression. So Doug Polk has played this hand fine so far, as has Negreanu. We are very deep stacked going to the flop. There are 54 big blinds in the pot, 212 remain. We see a doom flop for Doug Polk. Flop comes King of Diamonds, Jack of Spades, 8 of Diamonds, giving Doug Polk middle pair, overcard, backdoor nut flush draw. What more does he want in life, right? Happy New Year, buddy. And then Negreanu has top pair, top kicker. How do you feel about this situation? Do you like it? If you like this situation, if you like these videos, do me a favor, click the like and subscribe button below. Also the notification bell, ding, 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 ding. That will go a long way to helping the YouTube overlords know that you like these hand history reviews. Doug Polk checks the flop, as he should do with his entire range, and Negreanu goes for a small 25% pot continuation bet. And it turns out the solver actually mixes it up with his bet sizing on this flop. Notice on King Jack 8 in a 4-bet pot, the solver uses a 60% pot bet sometimes and a 25% pot bet sometimes. It does bet the majority of this range, only checking about 13%. And the reason the solver does not just bet small every time in this scenario is because King Jack 8 actually lines up pretty well with Doug Polk's range, as I'm about to show you in a second. And when that's the case, you're going to want to be betting bigger with some of your strong hands that really don't mind protection, right? And that's mainly, in this scenario, as you see, pocket aces, because you have to worry about your opponent having king, queen, or flush draws, or straight draws, or whatnot, and ace, king with no backdoor flush draw, or front door flush draw. If Negreanu had a stronger hand, like you see pocket jacks here for a set, that often bets using a smaller size the majority of the time. But ace king does go for a bigger bet a large chunk of the time, including with Negreanu's ace king offsuit in this scenario, because he has to worry about Doug Polk having a whole lot of ace x of diamonds, right? Back around to Doug Polk, easy call with this hand. I don't see any other reason to make any other play. If we look at the solver, as we see ace jack, pretty much pure calls. Turns out marginal made hands call the vast majority of the time. Pretty neat to see even ace king calling here if Doug Polk does have it some portion of the time. Notice that ace king is not necessarily in Doug Polk's 5-betting range, right? Like he does have some ace king in his calling of the 4-bet range, which is neat to see when we're playing this deep stacked. Polk's raising range here is probably going to be his best hands and his junky draws, and it turns out the best hands are clearly there. King Jack, Jack 8, pocket 8s. Then we see 9-7 suited. So this is almost certainly some good 9-7s and some bad 9-7s, right? 9-7 to diamonds and 9-7 not with diamonds. So those are opting to raise. That's like a bad gut shot, but has good equity if it's the diamonds. So we see some premium draws and some junky draws there raising. We see ace 8 raising, which is kind of neat to see. You got to presume if he gets jammed on or whatnot, he's going to fold that to a shove. So this is essentially being used as a bluff that has, you know, ace kicker outs. We see some flush draws raising down here, but really not a ton of bluffing, not a ton of raising in general. So this is a spot where Doug Polk really just does not get to raise all that often, and he does correctly call. So far, so good. Nice, easy hand. Turn is the 8, which is always an interesting spot, because if you think about Doug Polk's range here, notice he actually does have a lot of 8s in his range, right? Whereas if we look at Negreanu's range, he has almost no 8s, right? He has a few, but almost none. So this is a scenario where if we were considering the GTO point of view, I do think Doug Polk should lead some portion of the time here, but, very importantly, not with this hand. You're going to find that the middle pair type hands almost never opt to lead because they're just probably the best hand. It's not really all that vulnerable to being outdrawn. And he wants to do everything he can to keep Negreanu bluffing with whatever bluffs he has, right? Like ace-queen or ace-10 or any nonsense hand like, I don't know, ace-5 offsuit, right? He wants to keep Negreanu bluffing with all those. So easy check for Doug Polk. And now around to down Negreanu. And he opts to check it back. When I saw this play, I initially thought, ooh, I would always bet this hand. And let's take a look at what the solver does. Turns out the solver actually does bet the ace-king the vast majority of the time, even though Doug Polk does have some eights in his range. And that's just because, again, like on the flop, the ace-king is highly likely to get outdrawn if Doug Polk does have one of those high-equity draw-type hands. And solver's just happy enough playing a big pot with ace-king. A lot of people feel pretty dirty getting it all in on king, jack, 8-8 with ace-king for 200-something big blinds. But in a 4-bet pot, the pot was already pretty big, and it's just a good enough hand to go with. Notice even pocket queens bets here every once in a while, which is kind of cool to see. And then we see just a smattering of bluffs from Negreanu, right? We see hands like ace-7 offsuit. If he has it, he's betting it every time. This is a spot where I probably mess this up, and I do not bluff nearly often enough. Like, if you give me the ace-3 offsuit here, am I really bluffing it for half pot? Probably not, and you should be. Turns out, being aggressive is good when your range is very, very strong. Usually people's strong portion of their range is kind of correct. Like in my mind, right? Yeah, bet ace-king here. But their drawing portion, or their bluff portion of their range is usually a little bit shaky, and most people drastically underbluff in general. That said, Negreanu does let it go check, and the solver does check ace-king every once in a while, but not all that often. He should probably just put in a bet here, and Doug Polk cannot fold. Like, whenever I initially saw this hand, I'm like, oh, Doug Polk's going to get taken for a ride, because Negreanu's going to bet the flop, he's going to bet the turn, he's going to bet the river, lots of draws are going to miss a lot of the time, and Doug Polk's going to have to find some hero calls. But Negreanu lets him off the hook. River's the 7 of hearts. Here's another spot where I was kind of surprised to see the value bet from Doug Polk for a third pot. I'm like, huh, that's thin. But turns out, good value bet for a third pot. Doug Polk knows his GTO solver. As we see here, ace-jack mixes it up, betting roughly, 55-ish% of the time with ace-jack and checking it the other 45% of the time, so you can go either way. Let's take a look at other hands Polk is definitely betting here. We see king-queen, really any king just going for value in this scenario. We see some bluffs, some very clear bluffs with queen 10, queen 9, right? These are very obvious bluffing hands. Whenever you go kind of wide for value, you also get to go kind of wide as a bluff. And the thing is here, whenever Negreanu checks back on the turn, the solver will assume naturally that that Negreanu has a whole lot of hands that are mainly like worse than a good king, right? So if Negreanu's hand is worse than a good king, that means that Polk's kings are all very, very strong, right? So that is why we see all the 8s value betting, all of the kings betting, queen 10 and queen 9 betting, busted flush draws betting, random low nonsense, these are busted flush draws as well, also betting. So we see lots and lots and lots and lots of bluffs from Doug Polk in this situation. All right, this is where we got to make a decision in down Negreanu's shoes. Facing this third pot bet, what do you do? I want you to take a second, consider it, pause the video, and then write what you would do in the comment section below. In this scenario, if you were Negreanu, would you fold? Would you call the 9,700 bet? Would you raise to, let's say, 30,000? Or would you raise gigantic? Would you go all in? Go ahead, pause the video. I'll wait a second. Okay, did you do it? This is a situation where the GTO solver recommends raising with the ace-king. And you may say, what? He could have an 8. And yeah, he could have an 8. But if we go back and look at the GTO strategy here with the 8s, first things first, there aren't really a ton of them. And a lot of them opt to use a relatively big bet when they do opt to bet. I do see very clearly king 8. Well, first off, we're looking at the small bet size here, right? You see most of the 8s are opting to use either the all-in bet, the 100% pot bet, or the 50% pot bet. And the 30% pot bet is really not used all that often with the 8s, which means that when Polk does bet small, he usually has one of the thinner value hands. Like we see ace-jack going this size a lot, queen-jack going this size a lot, and then a smattering of the other good hands, which I'm sure no one is properly balanced in this scenario. But you're usually going to find that these small bets are very often reserved for decent but non-nut hands, and the bigger bets are often reserved for a much more polarized range of your effective nut hands, in this scenario a king or better, right? So when Doug Polk does use this size, assuming he's trying to play like a good GTO player, this is just a raise. This is just a straight up raise from the ace-king because of the way Doug Polk's presumed range and the GTO solver's range is structured. And we see ace-king goes for either an all-in or a 66% pot raise the vast majority of the time, a pretty big size. Also, Negreanu goes big with pocket jacks for the close to nuts, pocket kings for the close to nuts, and then a few sporadic bluffs. We see queen 7 suited for random bottom pair. We see 9-6 and 9-5 suited for busted flush draw. We see some random ace highs going for it. So a tiny bit of bluffs here and a lot of nut hands. And this is a spot where if Negreanu does raise to any size really, it actually does put Doug Polk in a pretty nasty spot. Now, the fact that Doug Polk has the ace of diamonds, that probably should lead him towards folding to a raise in general because he blocks some of Negreanu's potential bluff hands. Now, again, I realize here, if we look at the solver, only a small portion of the ace-x suiteds are going for the bluff, and I'm not even sure if those were the diamonds. But I'm not sure that necessarily matters because if you give Negreanu random ace of diamonds and 3 of diamonds here, maybe he does decide to turn it into a bluff every time. Who knows? I don't know, right? But this is a spot where I think Doug Polk's probably supposed to fold to a raise, but Negreanu let him off the hook and just called. And this is an interesting spot where Negreanu wins this pot. And I'm not saying this is what Negreanu does, but a lot of people in this scenario, they're like, ooh, I won the pot, ship it. But in reality, if Negreanu just bet flop, bet turn, bet river, he would have been able to get in a whole lot of money. Instead, he only got in 70 big blinds with top pair, top kicker in a 4-bet pot against middle pair, top kicker, backdoor flush draw, a hand that's probably going to be pretty inclined to pay you. And the other problem with never raising in this scenario is that you don't really get to raise with very many bluffs. And to be fair, like I said, most people drastically underbluff because it's hard to find the adequate number of bluffs. And you got to make sure you're getting in there and you're doing it. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, we're having a New Year's sale at pokercoaching.com. Happy New Year. 2020 was an interesting year. 2021 is off to an interesting start. Can't be as bad as 2020, though, across the board, right? Can't be. It can't be. It's interesting. I was talking to someone the other day about how you don't really get to pick how the random years go, right? So let's say you live for, 100 years. You're probably going to have like 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 like really bad years. But 2020 was like the worst year, hopefully. Let's make 2021 better. If you want to make 2021 better in terms of your poker skills, make sure you check out pokercoaching.com/New Year sale. You can get access to Poker Coaching Premium at a big discount right now, which features loads and loads and loads of quizzes, kind of similar to these videos. If you've been enjoying these heads up hand history reviews where I'm asking you what you would do in these spots, we have over 1,000 interactive quizzes where I ask you what you would do on every single betting round to make sure that you are actively learning. If you actively learn over the course of the next year, your poker skills are going to skyrocket. So make sure you check that out, pokercoaching.com/New Year sale. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you. Good luck in your games. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more strategy lessons, pre-flop charts, and interactive quizzes, make sure you get your free membership to pokercoaching.com right now at pokercoaching.com/free. I'll talk to you next time.